Hey there, this is Natalie, and it's time for more Overthinking ReZero. So while I was writing my last two ReZero theory videos, I kept coming back to the same guy, Al, Priscilla's knight, and also a character who, if you're anime only, you might think is just a very minor side character, or have even forgotten about altogether. This is because the earliest thing in ReZero that suggests this character is important was cut from Arc 3 in the anime, and that's the fact that he was a person from our world, like Subaru, but who has been in the ReZero world for a lot longer, at around 18 years. Now, I don't want to make this a heavy spoiler video. I will need to talk about lore and characters who haven't appeared in the anime yet to discuss my points about Al, but if you're okay with vague stuff like that, I won't be spoiling any major plot twists or revelations for anime-only fans, other than the one cut from Season 1, which I've already said, so I guess if you consider that a spoiler, I'm sorry. There's no real need to spoil plot points to talk about Al theories, considering that at the current point in the web novel, we haven't yet had the arc that's going to focus on Priscilla's faction, so there haven't yet been any big revelations about him, other than what was cut from Season 1. In fact, after being introduced in Arc 3, we don't see Al or Priscilla again until Arc 5, which has all of the Royal Selection factions in it. This is probably why they decided to leave the reveal about him out of Season 1, given it's such an interesting mystery but won't be explored at all in Season 2. I'm thinking they'll move Subaru finding out Al is from Japan to Arc 5, and so we'll see it in what would be Season 3. Unfortunately, the voice actor who played Al, Fujiwara Keiji, who was also the voice of Mace Hughes in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, AC/DC in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and Leorio in Hunter x Hunter, among many other great roles, died of cancer in April this year, so Al will be played by a different actor when we do see his return. Tappei has said that the Priscilla faction will be the major players in Arc 7, which will be the next one he writes, with Arc 6 feeling from the latest chapters like it's getting close to the end. So maybe at least some of the mystery around this man will be revealed then, though that would be heading into what would potentially be Season 4 of the anime. And yes, I not only have every faith that the anime will keep going for the whole story, but also that there won't be a 4-year gap between seasons again. A similar gap happened with Attack on Titan, but it's sped up a lot after that, and both series have both the fan bases and the good, properly planned out stories to support these kinds of runs to completion, rather than being the kind of stories with no planned endpoints that are just kind of kept going until interest runs out, which can be the case with a lot of light novel series. Now, how mysterious Al is to us right now is 100% intentional on Tappei's part. He's said that there are 3 main mysteries in ReZero, and that understanding Al's circumstances would answer one of them. At the current point, we aren't even able to define which of the many mysteries in the series are those key 3, so he's definitely not going to tell us more about Al just yet. Still, it's not bad for someone who seemed like a minor comic relief character in Season 1. In any case, Tappei keeping tight-lipped about this character isn't stopping people trying to figure out Al's significance, and based on what we know about him, I've got some theories, and I'd really like to know what other people think the deal is with this helmety isekai man too. I might as well say it now, I think that Al is the Sin Archbishop of Pride rather than Subaru, and I think explaining why will also allow me to talk about some of the other thoughts I have about him and the ReZero story as a whole. The first thing I think we can derive quite a lot of theory fuel from is simply Al's name. Aldebaran or Aldebaran or Aldebaran. Honestly, not a word I've ever heard anyone say out loud while speaking English, so please don't flame me if you're an astronomy student or something and know the right way to say it, is the name of a star in the Taurus constellation. It's also not a name that a Japanese person would normally conceivably have. The latter probably means that Al took on his name after coming to the ReZero world. And who else has star names that we can reasonably assume they were not given when they were born? Well, if you're anime only, the only one you'll know is Betelgeuse. But in fact, all of the current Sin Archbishops of the Witch Cult have star names, in the forms of the first names of Capella, Sirius and Regulus, and the last names of Roy, Lei and Rui. I won't talk too much about these characters, as I said this wasn't going to be a spoiler video, but they're all names of Sin Archbishops, and they do all indeed reference single stars, just like Aldebaran. As an aside, the Witches of Sin are not named after stars, but instead bodies within the asteroid belt, with most of them being asteroids, but Echidna being a moon. The exception is the Witch of Envy, whose name doesn't fit the convention, but Tappei has said that the meaning of her name is important, and that's something I'm going to cover in another theory video. Now, the fact that they are single stars is kind of important here. This is because Subaru also has a star name, but his is different from the Sin Archbishops in two key ways. Firstly, his name, which is the Japanese name for the Pleiades, is not a star but a star cluster, also found within the constellation of Taurus. It's actually what's used in the logo of the Subaru car company. In English, it's often called the Seven Sisters, with the brightest stars within the cluster being named after the Pleiades sisters from mythology. The names of these individual stars actually come up in ReZero 2 in Arc 6, though they're not the names of people, but in fact floors of a location called the Pleiades Watchtower. I'll say no more about that to avoid spoiling, but yeah, it definitely sounds like a place that might be of interest to a man named Subaru. The other way Subaru's name is different is that we know he was given that name by his parents. He was born Natsuki Subaru, unlike Al, who probably wasn't born Aldebaran. And while we don't know enough to say for sure about all of the other Sin Archbishops, there's enough hints that those star names they use were probably all given to them by the witch cult. I also think it's safe to deduce that Tappei using these naming conventions is intended to be part of the story, rather than some meta-symbolism or just something unimportant you can notice, like the Black family or having star names in Harry Potter. This is because it's made clear that Subaru was interested in astronomy because of the name his parents gave him, and therefore knows the names of stars and constellations. This is shown even in the Memory Snow OVA, but is important on a few occasions in the main story. But the stars and constellations in the ReZero world are different and have different names. So yeah, it's intentionally mysterious that there are so many things that reference something only people from our world could know. Perhaps even something that Subaru was set up to be interested in finding out about by being given the name he was in his old world, if you want to follow it to one of the conclusions that could be made about it. It almost feels like all of these things in the ReZero world were designed and named in a way that Subaru would be guaranteed to spot patterns in and feel a connection to. Like the world was preparing itself for the arrival of a man with his name long before he was born. But Al, well, no, his name just slots neatly into the set of the witch cult. Interestingly, we do know the name of the previous Sin Archbishop of Pride, who died before the start of the story, though this is in details from one of the X side story novels that explores Wilhelm's past, and so is probably spoilery even for a lot of web novel readers. So all I'll say is that he did not have a star name. So perhaps it's something that only applies to the current generation of archbishops, the archbishops who would be due to meet Subaru even. Another reason why I think it's likely that Alice Pride is that it's been shown to have a history with the witch cult, though we don't know which archbishops he was acquainted with, only that it wasn't Capella, the Archbishop of Lust, because he remarks on seeing her in Arc 5 that she's very different from the Sins he'd known. He also seems to have some history with Ram and Ram, hating Ram in fact, but not really having a problem with Ram. This could well mean that he was involved on the side of the witch cult when the Oni village was attacked, given it was Ram who was fighting that day. Since he never removes his helmet, it's possible that characters like Ram would even be able to recognise him if they could see his face. Now, we know from what Betelgeuse says to Subaru in Season 1 that the archbishops believe the Seat of Pride to be empty. Gospels are delivered to people who seem deserving, as far as we can tell, and this would appear to be how Betelgeuse thinks Subaru has been recruited as Pride. We also know from one of the If alternate route stories, Ayamatsu, which is the Pride story, that Subaru can end up becoming the Archbishop of Pride by contacting the witch cult himself. He doesn't do this in the canon story, of course, but it does give us an idea of how joining the witch cult might work. But from a scene that will be in Season 2, we also know that what really gives the Sin Archbishop their power and the authority of their relevant sin is usually consuming the relevant witch gene. It could be possible then that having been previously close to the witch cult, Al may have in some way got hold of the witch gene and gained the authority of Pride, without the rest of the witch cult knowing about it, and without ever formally becoming the Archbishop of Pride. Alternatively, maybe he actually was acting as the Archbishop of Pride at some point in the past, and the rest of them think he's dead. not being able to see Al's face to recognise him after all, or have been made to forget about him in some way, possibly involving the Witch of Vainglory, though she's not a topic I want to go into in this video because she's really spoilery. This is another thing about Al. He does have a mysterious power that could be very easily an authority. It seems to offer some kind of time manipulation ability, which only affects a certain range of space and has quite unclear, at least at the moment, rules about how it works. He describes using it as a gamble. However, time manipulation magic is something that doesn't exist as far as the normal magic in ReZero goes. It's something even Roswaal comments on as an impossibility for conventional magic in a conversation with Subaru concerning the ability to redo things. It doesn't seem like a divine protection either, as those are fairly well understood by the people in the ReZero world and are also something people are born with. Al was born in our world where such things don't exist. It's possible then that his mystery ability is the authority of pride, though another possibility is that it's actually something else special to people who've been isekai'd, given it concerns time manipulation like Subaru's return by death. Or maybe he, like Subaru, is favoured in some way by a witch, and maybe neither Al's power or Subaru's are actually authorities. The explanation I'm more convinced by personally at the moment is that it's the authority of pride, but if you prefer other ideas, do let me know what they are. As you can see, there are some at least reasonably convincing things in favour of Al being pride, but there are also 2 points that, at least at first glance, seem to go against this theory. Firstly, Al isn't really a very prideful character at all, and secondly, he isn't crazy, unlike the rest of the archbishops seem to become when influenced by the witch genes. It's shown in flashbacks that appear in Arc 4 that Betelgeuse used to be sane, and there are strong but unconfirmed theories that we may also see Sirius, the Archbishop of Wrath, in her sane form during the same bit of backstory. So it doesn't seem like the cult only brings in absolute psychopaths. Instead, people become that way. Al is never once shown to be crazy in his character, but he does have amnesia, and did think he was going insane for having memories of his old life in Japan until he met Subaru. So it can't be said that his mind hasn't been affected by something damaging at some point in his life in the ReZero world. This could be the result of the witch gene, perhaps not causing the same amount of damage to Al's mind as to others, because he's not in contact with the person who's pulling the strings of the witch cult, who's likely also influencing the others very strongly with mind-altering powers. I'm keeping this vague to avoid spoilers, but hopefully web novel readers are following who I'm talking about there, and why that could be likely. As for Al's lack of pridefulness, well, I think that is actually a hint at why he's in fact very compatible with pride in disguise. As I said in my video about why I don't think Subaru's pride, I think the relationships archbishops, witches and other sin-related characters have with their defining sin is about really understanding the sin, rather than just having a big obvious character defect that ties to the sin. Each sin has a corresponding virtue in the Christian canon the Seven Deadly Sins concept used in ReZero is based on, and we often see the sin archbishops obsessing about the counterpart virtue to their sin as much as the sin itself. Betelgeuse, who's sloth, praises diligence. Capella, who's lust, is actually quite disgusted by human lust in the way she talks and acts. It's as though the sin and the virtue are two sides of the same coin, and both extremes fascinate the archbishops. The counterpart virtue to pride is humility, and this is something that Al exhibits to an extreme level. Definitely something that could be seen as a defining trait, given that it's really noticeable in just about everything he says. Enough to stick out even if you're thinking of him as a minor character. All of his humour is self-deprecating. He has a lot of dialogue about how useless he would be in a fight, despite having a pretty solid history as a warrior. He is Priscilla's knight, but refuses to call himself such, instead insisting he's just a servant or lackey, which in itself is a clear reversal of Subaru's most iconically prideful moment, when he declared himself Emilia's knight, even though he wasn't. We can also see that he understands pride in his relationship with Priscilla. Priscilla is seriously waving the flag for the sin of pride, though it's not possible that she's the Archbishop of Pride herself, given that there seems to be a rule in the way this stuff works in ReZero that a person can't have an authority if they already have a divine protection, and Priscilla has the divine protection of the sun. Priscilla seems like a really difficult person for most people to understand and deal with, given one wrong move or word and she might kill you on a whim. But Al doesn't seem to worry about this. He knows how to talk to her, and she even listens to him. This shows that he really understands her pride and how not to offend it, so he can get along with her better than anybody. He really doesn't have to fear her. He's not sucking up to her or simping either, which is something Priscilla really expects everybody to do, so which wouldn't elevate his status in her mind. It's clear that he just gets her and knows how to deal with her. Priscilla chose Al to be her knight after holding a tournament to decide it, but interestingly, Al didn't win or even place in the top 4. She just chose him anyway. Priscilla genuinely believes the world is hers and no decision she makes can be wrong, so she won't have worried about her choice. But perhaps it was her high luck, which is high enough to be considered a power in itself, which enabled her to identify Al as being someone so strongly compatible with her. So then, with his clearly demonstrated understanding of pride, humility and prideful people, as well as a history with the witch cult, his amnesia and his star name, added to the fact that he never reveals his face, so could well be someone who doesn't want to be recognised by past associates. To me, it just seems like there are a lot of things pointing to him being Pride. But what do you guys think? Do you reckon Pride is Al or Subaru or neither of them? If you don't think Al is Pride, what do you think his deal is? Let me know in the comments or talk to me on Twitter if you have any ideas. As always, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm a new channel, so I'm still chasing the modest milestone of the first 100 subs, and when I get there I've promised to do a special one-off video in an ASMR style, which, if I hit 100 soon, will be a review of the spring anime season. I have no plans to start doing ASMR all the time, it's just going to be a fun thing to celebrate the first 100. When I get 250 subs, I've also promised to learn and sing an anime OP or ED that my Twitter followers can vote for. Luckily, I have a lot more of those than YouTube subs where I've been around for a couple of years as a writer. I don't speak Japanese, so that will be super hard and sound crap, but I'm down for humiliating myself for subscribers. Thanks for watching, and I really hope to see you again soon.